So I just wanted to show you real quick, if you look in the modules, everything is always found in the modules. So there's this Unit 3 reference sheet right here. And just keep in mind that this is something that you can have available. You will probably want to come back and refer to this reference sheet as you're going through, and I highly, highly recommend that everyone does the practice test today. So there's your midpoint formula. There's the what you need to know about perpendicular lines, and here's your distance formula. All right, so that's available. Now at the bottom of this, you have your Unit 3 practice tests. And I wanted to run through this practice test real quick. Okay, and I wanted you guys to see what it looks like, okay? And it's very, very important that you go through this practice test today, because if you just take the test tomorrow, you might not know exactly how to put in your answers. And then that can make it, well, potentially losing points. So we'll try and go over your answers that you put in order to catch any mistakes that might have been made. Okay. So you're going to have a diagram for each one. The first thing I want to say is all of these have diagrams. If you load this up and all your pictures are there, you're great. You don't need to worry about doing anything except, going through the problems. But if any of these are showing up like as a red X or just not loading up, no picture ever shows up, there's this at the very top, Unit 3 practice test diagrams. This is exactly the same diagrams that you see here, but this is a PDF of them. So if you need to, you can pull this up and you can find out what you need to know. All right, so you'll have a PDF like this tomorrow when you take the test. But for today, I'm going to run through some of these problems. I forgot to get myself logged in here on my iPad, so that'll take me just 1 second. Okay. So if we look at this problem, it's saying use the midpoint formula to find the coordinates of the midpoints of the diagonals. And I'll just scroll down enough so we can see what all the answer blanks look like. These are blanks that you're going to need to put in your answers for. So I'll just do one of these real quick. And notice that it says midpoint for the diagonal from A to C. So make sure you're reading this. This is going to be this diagonal right here. In fact, let me start marking all over the screen at this point. So I'm going to think about this diagonal right here. I want to find the midpoint of it. A has a coordinate of -1, 5. C has a coordinate of 1, -2. So as I'm doing this, remember your midpoint formula, and you have that reference sheet that you can come back to. I'm going to take my two x values right here and plug those in. So it's going to be 1 plus -1 divided by 2. And then 5 and -2 are your y values. So I can plug those in. 5 plus -2 divided by 2. And notice, you might have noticed I just took those two numbers and plugged them in, 5 plus -2. I didn't care about the order except that they're both y values, and that's totally fine. All right, the formula doesn't depend on you putting the -2 first before the 5. So 1 plus -1, we know that's just the same as 1 minus 1, so that's 0 over 2. And 5 plus -2 is the same as 5 minus 2, so that's 3 over 2. So this can simplify down. That's just going to be 0, and that's 3 over 2. So at this point, I need to put these answers in. This is the diagonal from A to C. So the 0 is just a 0. That's pretty straightforward. Your second coordinate is going to be 3/2, and there's lots of different ways of writing this. If you do 3 divided by 2, if you do 3 divided by 2, that's the same as 1.5. You could also write this as 1 1/2. All right, so I tried to provide all those as valid answers. So if you put 3 divided by 2, so I put the backslash, 3/2, that's 3/2. You could put, if you prefer it this way, put in 1.5. All right, and you might find it preferable to do that. anything, if you want to convert anything to decimals for this, that's fine, except for the very end, and I'll talk about that. So anyways, you have 0, 1.5. Let's just call that good. I'm not going to do the next midpoint, but I'm just going to pretend that the coordinate is 1, 2. So at this point, remember, if these are the same coordinate, you would say it's a parallelogram. And so the question is the quadrilateral a parallelogram? You can answer yes or no. The simplest thing to do is type it exactly how you see it. So in this case, it's not the same point for the midpoint. I'm going to put no. If you type it lowercase, that also works. But make sure that you are trying to just look at the format that the answer is supposed to be in. So are there any questions on how I plugged in my answers here? Okay, and I do just want to remind you guys and say this again, I made up this answer for the second part. I didn't actually do the work for this. You will need to show your work on paper. You're going to need to show your work for every single problem on this test. So anyways, I made up some numbers for this, but you could figure out the exact numbers and plug those in. So anyways, I'm going to skip over, let me clear all this. I'll skip over question 2, 3, and 4. That's more of the same. You'll notice it's the same type of answers that we're looking for here. So anyways, if I go down to question 5, this is now a different type of question. It says, find the product of two adjacent sides to determine if the quadrilateral is a parallelogram or a rectangle. And this goes back to what we talked about. If I come over here real quick, this comes back to this idea. I take two slopes, multiply them together and get -1. If it's -1, then they are perpendicular. If it's anything else, they're not perpendicular. So I'm going to pick any two sides of this, and it doesn't matter which two. So I'll pick this one and this one. So let me find the slope from B to A. It's going to be down 1. So that's -1 right there in the y direction. And then to the right, what is that? That's right 8. So that's +8 in the x direction. So this is a slope of -1/8. Going from A to D, I'm going up 6, I'm sorry, up 6 to begin with, and then right 1. So this has a slope of +6/1, which is just 6. So now I can multiply these together. This would be your work. I'm running through the actual process on this one. So I'm going to take my two slopes. If I call this m sub 1 and m sub 2, then that would be -1/8 times 6/1, which gives me -6/8. And this can be plugged in as -6/8, or I could write this as, if I actually plugged 6/8 in my calculator, I get, you can plug that in, I would get -0.75. So that would be another valid way of showing the slope. So if you decided to put this in as 0.75, even just 0.75, all right, that would work also. So if I plug those in, and then is this a parallelogram or a rectangle? And notice right here, it says put a P for parallelogram, R for rectangle. It's only a rectangle if I get a -1 for my product. So since it's not, it's a parallelogram. Okay, and that's how you do those types of problems. All right. The other thing we need to do is, I'm going to scroll down past 6, 7, and 8 to get down to question number 9. So now we have this question here on if this is a rhombus or a parallelogram. And the way we determine that is by using the distance formula, and it says right there, use your distance formula. And it tells me specifically to go from side A to B and B to C. And then it asks, what is the distance from A to B? All right, so make sure you're finding A and B. This is one where you do have to use the correct points. So from A to B, I'm going to go from I'll just find the distance on this one. That's -2, -2. And B is 1, 2. And my distance formula, again on that reference sheet, you do not have to have this memorized, is x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. If you've been doing the practice, this won't be too difficult for you. So I will plug in, it doesn't matter which one I call, I'll just call this one x sub 1, y sub 1, and this will be x sub 2, y sub 2. So x sub 2 gets plugged in. I could flip these around, it doesn't matter, but it's going to be 1 minus -2 squared plus y2 is 2 minus, and y1 right down here is -2 squared. So now I can just go through, I'm only going to solve one of these distances. 1 minus a -2 here, I'm going to look what's inside the parentheses first. 1 minus a -2 is the same as 1 plus 2. So that's just 3. So that's going to be 3 squared plus 2 minus -2 is the same as 2 plus 2. So that is 4 squared. So now whenever I look at this, it's going to be 9 plus 16. And now I can do square root of 25. And this happens to turn out to be a whole number, 5. Just one second. All right. So at this point, I'm just going to plug in 5. Now I'm only going to solve it one time. So the distance from A to B is just 5. I ran through the distance formula to find that. All right, and then I would go and find the distance from B to C. And we've already gotten practice with how to use distance formula, so I'll let you guys do that part. So let's say that I find my answer is 3 square root of 4. No, 3 square root of 5. I'm just making something up. Again, this answer is just made up. So if my answer was for the next one, if this was 3 square root of 5, again, just a made up number, I can't type in that answer. And so I give you an example right here. If you're trying to put in 7 square root of 3 as your answer, you would put a SQRT in. So I would put in 3, no space, just that's SQRT, and then 5, because this is, notice it's the 3 square root of 5 right here. So that's 3 square root of 5. And this might be a little bit tricky. I will go over these. Hopefully you get it plugged in correctly. But if you make a mistake, a typo on this, and it doesn't give you credit for it, I will be looking over your tests afterward, because I'm not going to take credit off just because you didn't. You accidentally messed up with your letters. But again, hopefully you can get this right. So again, you're going to have an example on the test. So 7 square root of 3 would be written this way. 3 square root of 5 would be written this way. And if these are the same distance, that means that this is a rhombus. If it's not, it's just a parallelogram. So I'm going to put in a P right here to say it's just a parallelogram. And anyways, hopefully that made sense. So before I submit this test, and I didn't go through all the questions, but before I submit it, did anyone want to have any questions on how to plug in your answers for any of this? Okay. I did want to emphasize that if this seems like, if I make a little mistake, I'm going to get counted off. I do want you to plug your answers in the right way, but I will be looking over your tests. So if you made a mistake on it, I'll look over it and make sure it wasn't just a typo. All right. And I'll look at your answers, but ideally you put your answers in correctly. It counts it for you and you're all good to go. You'll have a couple of equations to solve down here, and you'll just need to plug in what you get for X. And I will submit the quiz. Hopefully this, that is weird. that you should be able to see your quiz score. So I need to maybe change the settings on this. I apologize. You can take the quiz multiple times. I should have the settings where you can see your results. So I will double check on that. But bottom line, submit your test. You should be able to see how you did. And then you can retake the quiz just to kind of look at it. Not that you need to go through all the questions multiple times, but that I just wanted to run through that. If you have any questions on any of this, if the concepts are not clear for you, if just this test format is not clear for you, please stick around and ask those questions. Otherwise, I will let you head out at this point to go and practice with the test.